This is the third video in our brand new YouTube series, NFL season previews, off-season reviews. We're diving deep into all 32 NFL teams. Brian, we're going to be talking about the Denver Broncos in this video. What do you think about the Broncos and kind of the season that they had last year going into 2025?
Well, I think they did pretty good last year. They went 10-7 with a new quarterback, kind of almost new staff, and they were starting to gel right there at the end. So I I actually think they're going to do fairly decent this year. We talked about it in previous videos about how this could be one of the toughest conferences out of all of them. But again, I do see them doing fairly well this season. Like I said, they went 10-7 last year, 2024 season. So I guess let's get into what do you think about free agent departures?
Yeah, so they actually had some pretty big names. Javonte Williams has been their starting running back for a while now. He's had some issues as far as staying healthy goes. Obviously, had a real bad ACL tear early on in his career. Has not really looked the same. Not as productive. Not as explosive coming back from that. An ACL injury is kind of like a hitting the father time button. It really ages a running back's productivity. A lot of times they just can't come back and produce the same way that they did before. Linebacker Cody Barton might be their biggest loss. He went to the Titans this offseason. And then kind of an unheralded departure might be their punter, Riley Dixon, who is off to Tampa Bay to play with the Bucs this year. He has been a very good punter in the league for a while now. It's kind of one of those things that offenses that can that have to punt the ball from time to time. I mean, realistically, that's all of them. But being able to play like the field position game there and kind of dictate that with the defense that they have, a punter that can really pin an offense back and then let their defense go out and make a play, I think is going to be huge for them. Just a big loss that I think a lot of people might overlook. But they also brought in a good number of guys that I think can really help transform this team and keep them going in the right direction. Evan Ingram is probably the biggest name on that, coming over from the Jacksonville Jaguars. He is going to be a true threat at tight end that they have not had. Sean Payton obviously knows how to utilize the tight ends. He's proven that throughout his coaching career. Evan Ingram is a receiving specialist. He can become the new best friend for Bo Nix. Same can be said for J.K. Dobbins. He kind of got a second chance in the NFL last year with the Chargers, did really well. Now he comes over on another one-year deal here with Denver. He's going to be splitting carries with a new rookie running back that we'll talk about here in just a minute. But then they also made two real big signings on the defense, both of them coming over from San Francisco. You've got linebacker Dre Greenlaw and a safety, Hufanga. So both of them are going to be real big additions and I think big contributors to this defense. The story with Denver is continuing to keep your defense strong while building around Bo Nix and letting him prove that last year wasn't a fluke. And I think if you look at what they did in free agency, I think that's something that the message was clear to the rest of the league that that's what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it in podcast and in some of these videos. The sophomore slump, I actually think it's going to be real for Bo Nix. I think he may suffer a bit this coming up season. I don't think it's going to be like huge. I don't, I think if that's what hurts Denver, they may have to, look at some other aspects. But I do see him not putting up the crazy numbers that he did last year, and getting him out of situations that they ought not have got out of. So, because teams will have game film on him, they will know what he can and can not do, his tendencies, things of that nature, things that you can't learn until their second year or third year in the pros. So it'll be interesting to see how Bo, holds together that sophomore year and kind of what he can bring to the table. But I'm like you, I think their defense, it did stay pretty strong and they didn't have a lot of changes on it. And most of us that watched last year, I had several on my fantasy football team, including Sutton. So I did watch a good number of uh, Denver's games, and their defense is what holds them together. So, with them not having a lot of changes in that, I think they'll do pretty decent. But like I said, I do look to see that slump in Bo Nix, which could hurt them.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a couple of re-signings that they had. DJ Jones at defensive tackle. Again, you talk about Greenlaw and Hufanga coming in. It's just them fortifying that defense because that is their big strength. And so keeping as much talent on that defense as possible because of the defense like that, even a struggling sophomore, young quarterback can really be propped up by a dominating defense. They're going to give him a lot of turnovers. That's more opportunities to get the offense on the field and everything like that. Denver can be a really good team this year. And then you look at what they did, bringing back Matt Pert. He was a backup tackle. I think he can play left and right side. You'll probably see him listed as the backup left tackle on the depth chart there. But it's just one of those things where continuity, familiarity, bringing back these guys that can, even in a worst case scenario, you think about losing a left tackle and how detrimental that would be to 90% of the teams. That was somebody that they really prioritized in bringing back because he does have that familiarity and he has the ability to step in, take some starts, and provide that good protection. But then moving forward to what they did in the draft, I think a lot of people were looking at the running back position thinking Denver's going to be the team that pulls the trigger on Omarion Hampton in the first round, or maybe even a Travion Henderson, a Quinshon Judkins. Everybody just knew that's what they were doing. And they kind of shocked the world a little bit. They took John A. Barron. He's a cornerback out of Alabama. And you look at that team, you're like, did they really need another corner? Well, you look at the AFC, and the answer is always yes. You look at what the Bills did. I mean, you look at what the Chiefs on offense look like. You look at Baltimore. Like, you can never have enough defensive talent in the AFC because there's so many really good offenses in that conference. And even just in their division, it's a war of attrition. So they are making it to where they can hang with these high-powered offenses and keep their young offensive group in every single game that they play. You go to the second round, and they do address the running back position. They bring in R.J. Harvey, who is a fantastic do-it-all back out of UCF. He is a little bit on the older side for a prospect, but you look at the way that the NFL views these running backs, they pretty much only care about their rookie contract anyway. So if he's 24 years old now, you get him until he's 28. That's pretty much the time that you'd want to get rid of a running back anyway. But RJ Harvey is very good. He's fast. He's elusive. He's got good receiving ability. He is going to be the lightning in the thunder and lightning combination that you get from bringing in J.K. Dobbins. You'd think back to those Saints teams that had Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. RJ Harvey is your Alvin Kamara on this team. He can be extremely good. Just put the ball in his hands and let him do wonders for your team. I think that's going to be a great thing. And then in the third round, they make another really good addition in Pat Bryant. He's a wide receiver from Illinois. If you look at a lot of the scouting reports and everything like that, his pro comparison, a lot of places was listed as Cortland Sutton. Sutton starting to get older. His contract might not make a lot of sense for Denver as they move forward and they prepare to have to pay Bo Nix his money and everything like that. Pat Bryant could potentially fill that role of Sutton moving forward. But you look at the other options, with Evan Ingram, Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims. They took Troy Franklin, which was obviously a favorite target of Bo Nix at Oregon. They've got some weapons on this team now. And it looks like they are trying to build that offense up around Bo Nix, give him a lot of options to be successful so that maybe he doesn't regress as much as you see a lot of quarterbacks do in their second seasons. That being said, what do you think Denver looks like going into 2025 just with all these additions that they've made?
I think they look pretty good. They didn't change up their line, so you've got the camaraderie, the unity there. Bo Nix is obviously he's familiar with them now at this point. So I think that offensive line, like you said, is going to help tremendously. Settle him down a little bit. Like I said, I think you're going to see a couple more bad decisions on him, and that's why I think he's going to go into that sophomore slump a little bit, just because of he got a lot of confidence, and where confidence is great sometimes, but it also can be a detriment in that you start thinking you can do more than you actually can do. So, I do. Yeah, they are bringing weapons in, and that's a good thing. But at the same time, it almost could hurt him if he's got too much confidence and he starts making, a bad decision. And then if it turns into quicksand, does that bad decision lead to another bad decision, so on and so forth. So I don't know. This team was kind of hard. I do think their defense is gonna keep them in a lot of games. You know, I'm thinking they're probably in that 10 through 12 win games. Could be wrong. It could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less. Again, this division is so hard to pick because all the teams are very, very similar. Obviously you've got Kansas City that kind of stands out, but I think all four of these teams could end up with very similar records.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kansas City is the rising tide of this division because what Kansas City does puts a stress on the other three teams, and they have to build basically aggressively saying like, hey, this is a team that we know we're going to see twice a year. We have to compete with them. Obviously, you have wild card spots, but you'd really like to win your division. You'd like to go in as a high seed, maybe get a first round bye, that sort of thing. So Kansas City being as good as they are and will continue to be, it just makes these other teams have to try to catch up consistently. It puts the pressure on them to be good and make moves that maybe they wouldn't make if Kansas City wasn't in their division, which I think Las Vegas is a team that we'll talk about next in the next video. But I think that really influenced a lot of decisions that they've made. But looking at Denver Broncos, I want to bring up two names. It's Baker Mayfield in Cleveland, and it's Andrew Luck in Indianapolis. Those are teams that drafted a young quarterback and then failed to give them what they needed to succeed, and their careers fell apart. Baker Mayfield obviously has had a great resurgence down in Tampa, but then Andrew Luck ended up retiring because he was getting beat up so much that it became almost like not worth it for him to continue playing the game. His health and the declining of his body at such an astronomical rate was not worth him continuing playing football, which he loved doing and should have been so much better than what we got from him in the NFL. I think those two guys are cautionary tales for Denver and what they need to do with Bo Nix. And so they are surrounding him with more talent. So moving into like their strengths and concerns for this upcoming season, I think the concern is exactly what you talked about. The worst thing that could happen to Denver this year is a sizable sophomore slump for Bo Nix. If he looks like Baker Mayfield's second year in Cleveland, that defense is going to be their biggest strength. They have brought in a lot of reinforcements and fortified what is an elite defensive unit already. Seems like it could be even better than it already was last year, which is a scary thought. But could that all unravel if Bo Nix is not playing up to par? He had a promising rookie year, but does he continue to build on that? I think that's why they go and they get a Dobbins and a Harvey to improve that run game, which was abysmal last year. They bring in an Evan Ingram as a safety valve. They are basically trying to prop him up and make him to where he is able to execute the offense on par with the opportunities that the great defense gives them. Defense being as good as it is going to keep them in a lot of games. It could be the reason why they win them, but the offense still has to do their part. Obviously, we've talked about the Chiefs and the Chargers already, and I feel like this is the antithesis of the Chargers, where their offense is going to be what wins the Chargers games. Their defense is probably what's going to be what costs them. I think that Denver is the opposite story. For that reason, I actually have the Broncos supplanting the Chargers as the second team finisher in this division. I have them finishing 11-6 and second in the conference, right above the Chargers, and it's on the back of that defense.
Yep, I agree. So moving into the fantasy football, do you have any winners that you would take off this team, or not even looking at any of them?
Similarly to what we talked about with the Chargers in the last video, that two running back system kind of hurts you when it comes to fantasy. In a dynasty setup, I love the thought of having RJ Harvey on my team because I feel like he can be very good. Obviously it remains to be seen how much work J.K. Dobbins gets and how long he's able to stay healthy if he is. That being said, of those two running backs, I would rather have Harvey. I think the Evan Ingram addition could be good for Bo Nix. Whereas I don't want Bo Nix, I'm happy with any of his weapons. I think Marvin Mims can be an exciting lottery ticket. And obviously, Cortland Sutton should continue to be the clear-cut number one receiver in that offense, and he should put up good numbers. So RJ Harvey, Cortland Sutton, and then to a lesser extent, Evan Ingram, I would welcome any of those on my fantasy teams this year.
Yeah, I actually had Cortland Sutton last year on my fantasy. He never did bad, but he never did great when you start looking at other receivers around the league. So if I'm playing in a league where, you play with a defense, some leagues do, some don't. I think you definitely, if you do, this is your defense. This should be the number one defense you look at across the NFL. I think they're that good, and they did not change. So I like them. Obviously, I changed out my defenses a lot depending on who's playing who, and we'll get into some of those other teams that may not be as strong, and that may be whoever they're playing, that may be your defensive choice. So, but I do overall, I like Denver's defense, and I played with them most of last year. So I would continue that trend moving forward. So, but as far as their weapons, I think you see that slump from Bo Nix, which is going to hurt, you're taking a Sutton or Mims. It would actually hurt you if that's your number one or number two wide receiver, being that there's so many good wide receivers out in the NFL.
I think a lot of this has to come down to how much you trust Sean Payton as a coach. And obviously, real life success and fantasy success don't always go hand in hand, but a lot of times there is a correlation to it. And you saw great fantasy success come out of New Orleans. You look at what Drew Brees was when he was throwing all those touchdowns. Michael Thomas once led the NFL in receptions, set the record for it. Jimmy Graham became that household name. He was neck and neck with Rob Gronkowski in a number of years. He was Kelsey before there was Kelsey, and then ended up getting surpassed by him. And then, obviously, Alvin Kamara, what he has been for fantasy since he started, even as a rookie. And so it's kind of like, can Bo Nix be Drew Brees? Maybe not, but it all comes down to that scheme. I don't think that there is a Michael Thomas level threat on this receiving group, but I think collectively there is enough weapons to hold up Bo Nix that this offense can be good, if not great, but that defense can be special.
Absolutely. I think that's all we have for the Denver Broncos, and we're going to keep driving forward. I believe our Raiders are going to be our next and final team out of the AFC West. Look forward to seeing you there.